Roll call.
Mr. Edmonds?
Here.
Mrs. Lynn?
Oh, present. Yes.
Mrs. Brown-Ware?
Present.
Mrs. Stiff?
Present.
Mr. Kennedy?
Now can we stand for the pledge? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. On the behalf of the Board of Education, I would like to welcome all of our visitors in person and those who are via live streaming. At this time, members of the public may to make their comments to the Board of Education on any item listed on the agenda. Please note, this is not the opportunity or the venue for the Board of Education members to engage in conversation or provide responses. The Board of Education respects and values your information delivered to us during public comment. Masks are required to be worn by the staff, student, visitors while in our buildings. Therefore, masks must be worn during public comments. Your comments should be directed to the Board of Education, and all attendants must conduct themselves with respect and courtesy towards others. You must conclude your comments in 3 minutes. Thank you. Ms. Rico, can I have the first? Can you call the first name?
Sure. Ms. Colleen Piercy?
I was here last week. I'd like to conclude my comments. My comments have to do with your entire agenda. I'm going to read something to you from a book that I purchased. It is written by Mark Levin. He is a great patriot of the United States. It's called American Marxism, and it is very fitting for this school board. One of the comments that is made in his book,
It's not on the agenda.
excuse me, it's going to be on your agenda. Thank you. Freedom is never more than
No.
one generation away from extinction.
Miss, that's not on the agenda.
This is part of your agenda. I'm commenting on your agenda. That's my right under the Constitution. I have a right to bring my grievances to any government board that is an elected board, and I will do so. Thank you, sir. Freedom is
Miss-
never more. Excuse me. No.
Excuse me.
Excuse me, sir.
Excuse
I
me.
have a right to bring my grievances to any government body that I choose. It says so in our Constitution. You do not surpass our Constitution.
Can I talk? If you wanted to talk on anything, you should have did that at the end. This is for you to talk on any.
And I will do
agenda
so
item.
if you will give me the opportunity. You keep interrupting me. So will you let me finish?
As long as you talk on the agenda item.
I am going to talk on the agenda items,
Okay.
S, with an S on the end. So please allow me to finish.
All right.
Thank you.
And I'll let the clock start now.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it to our children in the bloodstream. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on for them to do the same. Or one day, we will spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it once was like in the United States where men were free. This does apply to this school board and your agendas. Masks, CRT, vax passes. No, excuse me, I'm going to finish. I have a right under this book that tells me that I
Mask
can.
is not on the
I
agenda.
don't care, I'm speaking.
I care.
You work
Ma-
for me. I don't work for you, you work for me. I am going to speak, and I'm going to finish.
3 minutes.
I have 3 minutes, and I'm going to speak. Thank you.
Your 3 minutes is up.
You stood here, no, excuse me. You stood here last week, and you got up and walked out of this room on a gentleman that was praying. For you, excuse me, sir, I have a right under the Constitution to
No, she
speak,
don't.
and I'm going to do so.
I think a motion to.
Motion for recess, move to recess.
So moved.
Our Constitution says we have a right to speak to any government ordinance.
Motion to go back into board meeting? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Edmund?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero Rivera?
Can I get an approval on on the consent agenda?
Also move.
I second.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Brown O'Meara?
Yes.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes.
Mr. Edmund?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
We have, got some vacancies to fill, officers' positions. We have, the first one is for vice president. Can I get anyone to nominate any individual for,
Then nominate Michelle Stiff for vice president.
is there any other? All right. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mrs. Brown O'Meara?
Yes.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes.
And Mr. Edmund?
Yes. I know you weren't expecting that. Since Ms. Stiff is moved out and there's a vacancy in the secretary position, do we have a motion to, no, not a motion, nominee for the secretary position? Nominate Lorraine.
Oh. I nominate Lorraine Guerrero Newmayer.
Any others? Roll call, please.
Mr. Edmund?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes.
Mrs. Brown O'Meara?
Okay. And like usual, I usually turn, without going through the items on the superintendent reports, turn it over to our Dr. Guzman at this time.
Thank you. No correspondence or legislative report at this time. I haven't received any new guidance since our last board meeting. So our first item is a presentation. So I'd like to welcome Mr. John Grueling, the president and CEO of the Center for Economic Development, as well as Ms. Julie Wilkinson, the vice president. And we've had a longstanding relationship that they'll go over, and they are just here to let us know about the partnership and to answer any questions.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, and congratulations on the new officers.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to be here this evening. Again, my name is John Grueling. I'm President and CEO of the Will County Center for Economic Development. It's a pleasure to bring some information to you, talk about our organization, and then Julie will talk about our relationship with the school district and some of the things that are going on in terms of support for our investors. So the Center for Economic Development was, is this working? All right. Oh, there, that's me. I guess I'm all thumbs. What am I doing wrong?
Yeah, we'll take it.
So the Will County Center for Economic Development, and I'd like to start out by saying we're celebrating our 40th anniversary this year. 40 years ago, in 1981, a number of Joliet business people got together and formed an organization called Greater Joliet, Inc. And the reason they did that, Will County and Joliet was in the throes of a Great Recession, and some people would say a depression. 3 steel mills had closed down. The Joliet Arsenal was in the process of decommissioning. Caterpillar went from 8,000 employees to just under 1,500. All of this happened within about 18 months. And jobs were fleeing Will County and Joliet. The unemployment rate in Will County at that time was 18%. And unfortunately, the unemployment rate in Joliet back then was almost 27%, 26.5%. As far as we know, that's like the highest unemployment rate of a city over 100,000 in the United States ever. And so that's not an award that we want, and that's what our founding fathers decided that we couldn't sustain, and we deserve better. So they created this group. The mission statement over the 40 years essentially hasn't changed at all. Our primary mission is to improve the quality of life for all residents in Will County by recruiting new companies offering high-quality jobs and a solid tax base, while assisting existing businesses to retain and add jobs. And we're funded from both the public sector and the private sector. You fall obviously in the public sector side, but when we created ourselves, the leadership said we want this to be primarily funded by private investors, companies that are doing business in Will County. So throughout our history, about 80% of our funding has come from private corporate investments. We call our members investors because they're investing in the future of not just their company, but of the entire Will County community. And again, the first phrase, quality of life for all residents, is certainly a primary goal. Second? Okay. So how do we do this? Number one, we're an information source. And one thing that we always want to pause and tell our existing investors like yourself, did you get it to work? Thank you. Is we are a great source of information. We have information on demographics, on taxes, on labor force, on technology, a lot of information on what's going on in Washington and Springfield, and we're quick and eager to share that information. But primarily our business is putting buyers and sellers together and really in the economic development realm. So first and foremost, our real estate information database is in high demand. The amount of commercial and industrial space in Will County continues to accelerate, and we have a complete database on what's available, how much it costs, and when it might be usable. Economic data and research. We actually do primary research. We're able to offer corporations and units of government information that you can't get from some of the more traditional sources. In fact, it's primary information that we collect. Market and labor force information, we work very closely with the Will County Workforce Investment Board. In fact, they share our domicile on Cass Street. We're partners with them, and they help us a lot in this space of workforce and workforce development. Business incentives, we don't use them a lot, but when it's appropriate, we certainly want to make sure that we are competing with other locations, not just in Illinois, but throughout the country. Project guidance and connections, one of the best things we can do for companies that are maybe not familiar with Will County is make introductions to companies that can provide services and programs, but more often than not, it's an introduction on the political side. Oftentimes a company president may say, well, do you think Joliet would like us to move to Joliet? And I'll say, well, yeah, let's go see the mayor. So we call up Mr. Odekirk, and we have a meeting, and 9 times out of 10, he's very welcoming and wants that business to come to Joliet. Government affairs, we want to be at the table when decisions are made. We know things are happening in Springfield and Washington that aren't always in our best interest, certainly not in our business's best interest. So we spend a fair amount of our time making sure we're in front of the people that are making big decisions about our future. Investments in infrastructure, taxation, regulation. In fact, I'm headed down to Springfield Thursday to talk about big money being invested in road and bridges in Will County. And then infrastructure development, which we see as a real principal thing that, quite frankly, we're all interested in, but there's so many different units of government involved in this. We want to make sure that there's a lot of focus when focus is needed. Perfect example is the I-80 project. The state of Illinois has been trying to rebuild I-80 from Minooka to New Lenox for the last 12 years, and they haven't been able to do it. Governor Pritzker got elected on the infrastructure ticket. That was one of his big positions. And when he passed, he got his Rebuild Illinois infrastructure bill, capital bill passed. He announced in Joliet that $1.3 billion was going to be made available to IDOT to rebuild that stretch of I-80 through Joliet and Will County. And our leadership was very much involved in making sure that happened. So I'm not going to go line by line, but, our history has a lot to do with making investments, making sure, again, that we're in the rooms when people are making decisions that are good for us or bad for us. One of the big things, we had an opportunity to tour today with one of our congressional members, and we took her down to the Intermodal Center in both Joliet and Elwood. And one of the things that we reminded her of, the federal government was responsible for a lot of the development in Will County due to the recommissioning and repurposing of the Joliet Arsenal. 23,000 acres, which was essentially a Superfund site because of the pollution that was there from making TNT for over 40 years, that leadership in Springfield and Washington and locally decided, no, we're going to reuse this space, and we created 20,000 acres of Medaywan tallgrass prairie, 1,000-acre national cemetery, second only in size to, where is that?
Arlington?
I'm spacing, in Washington, D.C., Arlington National Cemetery. We have the Abraham Lincoln National Cemetery. And then, 2,000 acres for industrial development and 1,000 acres for a landfill, all of which is being used by businesses and individuals in Will County. So our history talks a lot about how we tried to influence these decisions, which would create a good business environment and provide a platform for new investment. And what comes with the new investment, we sort of score ourselves by new jobs created, new investment dollars made, increase in the tax base, certainly for school districts and municipalities. We know there's a high reliance on property taxes, and every time a million or a 500,000 square foot building goes in, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars coming to our local school districts. And we think that's very powerful in terms of community economic development. And some would say this is good or bad, but we are, as a matter of fact, the largest inland port in North America. And we're not on an ocean, so I have a lot of people tell me, what's wrong with you? The reality is that, we handle 3 to 4 million international containers every year out in our two ports. So again, we do studies, we do arm twisting, and like I said, we're celebrating our 40th year in business. So I'd like to have Julie come up and make a few remarks about, who we are from an investment standpoint, and perhaps where the school district fits into all this. So thank you.
Thank you. As John mentioned, my name is Julie Wilkinson, and I am the Vice President of Investor Relations for the Will County CED. It's a pleasure to be here before the board tonight and to talk to you about the partnership and the possibilities to continue. So as John talked about the impact of the organization throughout 40 years, it's not to say that the CED does this by standing alone. The power of the CED is the partnerships behind us. So here you can see listed just a few of the organizations of which we have roles, whether it's a board or committee role, advisory position. Oftentimes we're called in when it comes to making decisions that will impact the region, or for data that will be driving decisions and studies by these groups. These are also some of the partnerships that we have that we can refer others to help businesses that are coming here, businesses that exist when they stumble upon issues, and we really take these partnerships as a point of pride for us and the relationships built over the years. As John mentioned, the CED is a nonprofit organization, and we are funded by investors. The term investor represents the longevity of the impact and the commitment that is being made. We have nearly 200 investors behind our organization. They represent over 20 sectors of the local and regional economy. So this is everything from education to entertainment to financial institutions, professional services, transportation, logistics, even nonprofit organizations that belong to the Center for Economic Development. And a full list of those investors is available on our website. We have more than 60 leaders on our board of directors, which is a real point of pride for us. I think that is representative of the level of activity here in Will County. Our board continues to be a place that businesses both on the public and private side, desire to be a part of, so that they can have a front row seat to help drive the future of the economy here. We engage our investors in our program of work, which we adopt annually. It changes just a bit from year to year based on the needs in the area and feedback from our investors, which we enjoy receiving and appreciate throughout the year. Some of the ways that we engage our investors are listed here. You can see our committees, our executive committee that helps sort of drive the strategy of the organization, the finance committee, which meets monthly to review all of our financial information, as well as our annual audit. Government affairs, as John mentioned, rather active group during the legislative sessions. An infrastructure coalition that is looking at all the components of infrastructure and assessing the county's readiness to move forward on projects. And that the folks around that table represent those major infrastructure entities. We have an investor relations committee to ensure that our contributions are stewarded properly and to encourage others to participate with their contributions. We also have the Will Economic Network, which sort of falls back to our service to the municipalities. The 37 municipalities in Will County are invited to participate in this economic network that we manage and facilitate regular meetings so that they can share best practices, communicate with one another. And here during the last 18 months or so, that group has been especially vital as communities have learned to pivot in light of COVID. That's been an incredible network to share grant information for small businesses, for communities, for nonprofits, and also talk about how municipalities could support their businesses, particularly during the shutdown. We also do economic development trainings. One of our most popular is what we call an economic development boot camp for elected and appointed officials, and that's very well attended each year. We welcome out mayors, village administrators, city staff, village trustees to come together and hear sort of an economic development 101. And that's a great event for us. And then we do events for our investors throughout the year as well on topics that are of importance to them. Joliet Township High School has been a CED investor since 1992. This is one of our longest relationships, and we're really proud of this. Having that name printed among the list of investors in our annual report and on our website and in our discussions is really a strong point to say that JTHS is a partner in creating a strong economic future and strong quality of life here in Joliet. The past pledge, so we want to thank you first of all for completing a 5-year pledge in 2020. That past pledge was $1,200 annually. The new entry for an investor, so this would be for typically a private company, is $2,500 to join the CED and participate with these benefits. We are proposing, after discussions, for a $1,500 investment for 1 year to be reviewed by the board annually so that you can assess the benefits if that's something that you move forward with and then make a decision for the year ahead. So moving away from the pledge and to a 1-year commitment. And last, I just want to point to some of our events that are coming up. These are events that we are happy to extend the invitation to and do so via email through our newsletter. We've got an economic report coming up next week. This is a virtual event. We have a sponsor, so we're able to provide it without cost, and the title is Getting Back to Work. So we've got our featured speaker is an executive vice president from the Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago, who will be talking about workforce and labor trends in light of COVID on a national scale, followed by our own in-house economist, Doug Pryor, who will talk about labor and workforce specific to Will County and help giving some guidance on what our employers can expect based on how the data is trending. And then lastly, we will wrap up with, as John mentioned, we have a strong partnership with the Workforce Investment Board and Workforce Services of Will County. So Caroline Portlock, the director of that organization, will be offering some very practical tools that are available through federal grant dollars. I see Michelle nodding. She knows this very well. But we are excited to be able to offer that to our investors and those that are attending, because those are programs they may not be familiar with and could be extremely helpful right now. So with that, we just want to close and say thank you. This has been an incredible relationship. We're excited, after meeting with Dr. Guzman to get an update and to learn about some of the work ahead, some of the needs that students are facing in particular, and how the CED can help be a convener for different groups that can come together and partner to help meet those needs of the students. We realize this is a very important relationship for both sides, and it would be our pleasure if you would allow it to continue. So, thank you.
Any questions for John or Julie?
No. No, very good presentation.
No, thank you for coming this evening. Thank you very much.
Appreciate
Thank
this
you.
opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next presentation is from Dr. Hampton. It's the 2021-22 tentative budget presentation.
Good evening to everyone. Each year, the board must adopt a budget that is then filed with the State Board of Education. So tonight, I am presenting the tentative budget for FY22. So we always start with the mission, and I'm not going to read the mission, but we always start with the mission of the district. And then we move into the budget. And what I always do is try to give a historical preference of what actually entails the budget. So these are the type of funds associated with the budgets for school districts. So the education fund is the 10 fund. The operations and maintenance fund is the 20 fund. Bond and interest is the 30 fund. Transportation, 40 fund. Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund is the 50 fund. Social Security Fund is the 51 fund. Site and Construction, 60 fund. Working Cash, 70 fund. Tort, 80 fund. And Fire and Prevention and Safety is the 90 fund. So for FY21, sources of revenue, local property taxes, percentage is 75.37%. We received 20.9% for state revenue and federal 3.73%. And the sources of revenue, federal grants, Title I, II, IV, the Federal School Lunch Breakfast Grant Program, Special Ed Idea Flow-Through Grant, Medicaid Fee-for-Service, evidence-based funding, allocation, vocational education, driver's education, special ed private facility tuition. We also received the CTE Innovation Grant, 3-year grant. This is the second year of that grant. The CARES 1, which is actually due at the end of September. We also received what we call ESSER 2, CARES 2, that must be expended by FY23, and then the American Rescue Plan grant must be expended by 2024. And then I always put this historical preference here because evidence-based funding started after the 2017 school year, where essentially every school district had what we called a base minimum funding. For us, that was roughly 10.8 million. And the formula changed to allocate funds to those districts that may be in higher needs. So lower income, special ed, and then ELL population. And so each year, the General Assembly has allocated roughly $350 million to the evidence-based funding formula. And then there's tiers. Tier 1 meaning the neediest to Tier 4. We're a Tier 1 district. So we receive the allocation first. Once Tier 1 school districts are funded, then Tier 2, then 3, then 4. And then you see each year how that allocation has increased over the 4 years. And for this year, $350 million has been allocated for this school year. Sources of expenditures, salaries and benefits, 71.89%. Not unique to any other school district or municipality. Normally, salaries and benefits encompasses anywhere between 65 to 75% of a budget, depending on the size of your district and your budget. Purchase services, 8.96%. Supplies and materials, 4.9%. Capital outlay, 1.3%. Bonds, 7.2%, and then tuition, 5.27%. So for this past school year, what we received in terms of each fund that I spoke to earlier, education fund is the largest fund of all the funds. It's the largest operating fund of your school districts. Obviously, that's where all your teachers, instruction, supplies, material, all your purchase services for instruction, insurance, all of those things associated with instructional purposes are in your ed fund. So we received roughly $82 million in ed fund, roughly $12 million in operations and maintenance, 7.5 in bond and interest, transportation, 9.9, municipal retirement social security, roughly $4 million, site and construction, 8.6, working cash, 3.9, tort and immunity, 4.7. So I also must add in this, as I'm speaking about this, last year's budget was very, very conservative due to the pandemic. There were so many unknowns that was out there. We didn't know if we would receive federal dollars, state dollars. We didn't know what would happen in terms of local taxes being collected. So it was very, very conservative in regards to the budget. But it's happy to say that we did receive all of our state funding, all of our federal funding, and we received roughly all of our local taxes. So that's good as a district. It also speaks to our economy. The things we thought that would happen did not occur, and so that's good for us as a district. And then on the flip side of that, of course, because we wasn't in full operations as a district, some of those expenditures that was very conservative, we realized savings also. So for instance, let's say transportation, maybe 20 to 25% of our bus service operated last school year. So a lot of the maintenance, costs for gas, different things like supplies, we realized those type of savings. So in the education fund expenditures, 73.9 million, operations and maintenance, 8.2 million, bond and interest, 7.3, transportation, 5.6, municipal retirement, social security, 3 million, site and construction, 7.9, tort and immunity, 3 million, working cash, 4.2. So with that, you see our total revenue for FY21 overall budget was $126 million. Total expenditures, roughly $106 million, with a fund balance of $19.8 million. So a lot of the things that we expected from budget to actual were totally different. And again, it just speaks to the economy, how we recovered, how we're moving forward, and hopefully everything in regards to what needs to happen to recover, we continue to build on that versus going backwards. And then I always like to look at our operating funds because this really tells the pulse of where the district operates from day to day. And you'll see that with the total operating funds, which is education fund, transportation fund, and in your O&M funds. So those are your three operating funds, your major funds. 104.5 million for revenue, 87.868 million for expenditures, surplus of 16.7 million. So that just speaks to the viability of where we are as a district. So as we move into this school year, I just like to always speak to what goes into building the budget. So we always start with our operating funds, and that starts with our CPI. So we're talking in terms of CPI and our equalized assessed value. We're speaking of our levy at that point. And so consumer price index is what CPI means. And essentially what that is one good of services. So for instance, let's say we have gas and milk and eggs in a pot. And that's compared pricing from one year to the next. The difference is the increase or decrease depending on the pricing of each from one year to the next. So CPI in regards to this budget was 2.3%. That's significant for us because that's how our new money is derived. It's prior year levy plus CPI. And you'll hear this presentation in November, but this goes into the development of this year's budget. So it's 2.3% for CPI. New construction was over 90 million. So again, that speaks to the viability of the area and our district and our surrounding boundaries of our district. Many areas are not experiencing that type of growth in terms of new property. And I know we've had conversations before about the Joliet area, the Will County area. We just heard the CED talk about different things that's happening in this area. And this area is growing quickly in regards to industry. It is considered a major hub for logistics of transferring goods and services across the country. And as a result, we do see businesses continuing to grow here in our area, which is good for us. The other piece that goes into this is the evidence-based funding. So you saw that that was roughly 9.8 million. I did receive information today that the new allocations are out for FY22. We are going to receive another $2.3 million because we're tier 1. So this actually will increase and adjust as we finalize the budget in September. So we just received that information today. In regards to ESSER, so all of our grant funds are in this budget, but normally it's a wash in terms of what goes in and what comes out. And we always separate that out because those are not dollars that will continue once they are exhausted. Also, what goes into development is our staffing. And of course, we have been bringing recommendations since March in regards to staffing, but normally those staffing are associated with our contracts, our FTE, the presentation that Diane did in March, and what Dr. Guzman has been presenting over the past really 3-4 months in regards to different staffing. Benefits, we saw a 4% increase in benefits. However, we do have an insurance committee, and we work very hard for that 4% not to be realized in our staff paychecks. So we work hard to change benefit structures so that we won't see that 4% increase. Right now it's projecting to be about 5.2%. So we're going through that process now as an insurance committee to determine what can we do to lower that cost so that's not passed on to our staff. We have a great benefits program. We want to keep it that way, and that's one of the major components to attract and retain staff, right? Salaries and benefits. The other piece that goes into this, of course, is their operations and maintenance fund. You also see some recommendations. We're doing some things with CTE in regards to some classrooms. We plan to do some renovations to our driver's ed classrooms, simulators. We know that we have the continuum of the auditoriums renovations, which will hope to be completed here in October. And again, we're still evaluating other components of our facilities as we move forward. We know the indoor air quality are projects that will be completed, but those are being funded through the ESSER and the ARP grants. But there's a lot of work that will be happening over the next year, 2, and 3 in regards to those projects. So with that, projections for FY22, education fund, roughly 80.5 million, operations and maintenance, 11.5 million, bond and interest, 6.8 million, transportation, 9.1, municipal retirement social security, 3.5, site and construction, 3.1, working cash, roughly $1 million, tort, 5.1 million. Expenditures projections, education, 78.4 million, operations and maintenance, 11.3, bond and interest, 6.8, transportation, 8.9, municipal retirement social security, 3.3, site and construction, 3 million, tort and immunity, 4.5 million. The total revenues for FY22, 121 million roughly. Expenditures, 116 million.4, with a surplus estimated at about 4.6 million. This number is probably more similar to what we've seen in the past, pre-pandemic, so really for the past year and a half. But now, all expenditures, all revenue assumptions that we would normally have in a year without any major conservative assumptions, basically takes us back to our normal operating. So we know all students are here starting tomorrow, and it's anticipated that we will be operating throughout the school year. So everything is a go, full transportation, full cafeteria service, everything will happen like it would in a normal school year. And then again, for operating funds, 101.3 million, expenditures 98.7 million, total over and under 2.6 as a surplus. And then I always put in, here as what we can do as stakeholders, continue to be efficient with operations, control expenditures, continue to monitor our curriculum, allocate dollars to support student achievement in an effective and efficient manner, increase in student attendance. And so we know with evidence-based funding is calculated differently than what it has been in the past. We used to be calculated based on the best 3 months of the school year. Now there are 2 points in time that the state basically pulls from our student information systems. That's once in October and then again in March. And then based on those two numbers, it's based on now student attendance for that day or 2 days, and then they take the average of the two. But because of the pandemic, they actually are going back to FY19 and using those numbers because FY20 and FY21 are skewed. So, and then of course we apply for any grants relative to the direction of the Board of Education and the superintendent. So with that, the other piece is, and as I mentioned before, the budget must be in public display for 30 days. So the notice will go into the paper on Thursday, be in public display for 30 days. It's in my office. If anyone wants a copy, they can also send an email, and we send those documents out. And then come September, we bring the final budget to the Board of Education for passage, knowing that we're going to have some changes because we haven't finalized all grants. We haven't received all allocations or assumptions from the state and federal government. So we do see changes between between August and September. They're not significant changes, but we do know that we received $4.5 million in ESSER II funds, right? And roughly $12 million in ARP funds. Now, all of that is not being expended this year, but we'll see those fluctualities as we finalize those budgets, Title I, special ed budgets, CTE budgets, AP budgets. So all of those types of things are normally finalized between August and September. Any questions? No?
No questions.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you.
Hanson. The last portion of the superintendent report is our annual update for off-site educational programs. And so I first of all want to thank Mr. McGuffey for putting this information together as he does on an annual basis. And though our numbers were lower, we're still happy to report that we were able to continue these partnerships with Joliet Junior College, and students did earn dual credit and in some cases certification or pre-certification for some of these programs. This is an area that we were really gaining momentum prior to COVID, and this is an area that we're going to try and reset and recalibrate and hopefully gain even more momentum. So either myself or Mrs. McDonald will be happy to answer any questions that the board might have.
No questions. Any
Thank you.
questions?
Can I ask,
How are you encouraging it within the student body to take these different types of programs?
Sure. So at Joliet Township High School, students go into career academies. So during their freshman year, they do research and career awareness activities, and then they choose an academy. And it's not like a college major, it's just more for guidance. And so we have our 5 career academies, then within the career academies, we have pathways that even segment it up more. And so, for example, we have our Health and Medicine Academy. And so we target students in the Health and Medicine Academy for the Certified Nurse Assistant Training Program as an example. So we'll send them emails, or we'll do orientation sessions during advisory. So those are some of the ways that we target. Also, our staff target students within their classes. We have a robust career and technical education program, and we're really excited for kids to come back in person so that they can take full advantage of those programs. So those are some of the ways that we target the students for these programs.
We also have course selection week. It's usually late after Thanksgiving, but before the students leave for Christmas break. And in all their classes, they have, actually, it's through Infinite Campus now, so it's online. But in every of their classes, they talk about the next year. So I'm a freshman, I'm talking about my pathway for my sophomore year. What are my career interests? What electives should I take? And this, I can compliment the CTE teachers. They do a beautiful job on sharing like all the different possibilities that we do offer in the district. So our enrollment would be great, you know, higher. I think last year was because of COVID and because JJC, the lab portion was virtual as well. It was just very difficult for our students. But our CTE teachers do a very robust job on promoting those different opportunities for our students.
Thank you. So we go to the next agenda item, which is recognition and awards, and we see there's none for the West or the Central Campus, correct?
Correct.
Go to our action items. Can I get motion to approve Agenda A?
I so moved.
Questions? Roll call?
Mrs. Guerrero Romero?
Yes.
Mrs. Stitt?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy? Sorry, Mr. Edmund?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Motion to approve action item B?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any questions?
I just have one comment. This recommendation is due to the ongoing pandemic. And with the growing positivity rates, we just want to make certain that we're not putting students in unsafe situations. So students can still collect community service, but we're waiving the requirement for graduation, specifically for the class of 2022, due to our current situation. I have gotten a question, what about juniors, sophomores, or freshmen? And we've been taking that on each year, and there is talk, like we could prorate it if we would want to, depending, but at least for this year, then we can get this out to students so that they know in advance.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero Romero? Mrs. Stitt?
Yes.
Mr. Edmund?
Yes. Now I'm just calling the letters. Action item C. Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Questions? Roll call?
Mr. Edmund?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero Romero? Mrs. Stitt?
Yes.
Motion to approve item D.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Questions?
This is a request for JIU credits, 2 of them for a class that actually I will be co-facilitating after school with one of our teachers, Laura Boyle. The focus of the class is regarding grading practices. So right now we have a possible cohort of 26 plus staff members who are interested in it. So by offering JIU credit, the teachers can use those credits. If they fulfill all the expectations of the class, those 2 JIU credits would go to where they are on the pay scale. So I'm really excited about teaching the class.
I'm excited for you to have something like that and teach it to others. It's something that's really
It
important.
started last year with one of our small professional development sessions that we offered in January. Actually, Laura Boyle and several other teachers facilitated it, and there was a lot of interest in it. So we're expanding it to outside of the school day, and it's an after-school and online class, and the response has been really tremendous.
Great. Other questions? Thank you for the comments. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mr. Edmund?
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero-Namir?
Yes.
Mrs. Stitt?
Yes.
Motion to approve action item E. Second.
Second.
Questions?
This is an annual agreement, so that our students that are interested in a career in cosmetology can begin that training while they are in high school.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Stitt?
Yes.
Mr. Edmund?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero-Namir?
Yes.
Motion to approve action item F.
I so move.
Second.
Questions? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Stitt?
Yes.
Mr. Edmund?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero-Namir?
Motion to approve action item G.
I so move.
Second.
Questions?
Yes, this is information that was presented at last month's board meeting in regards to the focus of the cleanliness, the health, safety, and the size of our schools to add 4 additional custodians. And this will be funded through the ESSER 2 and the American Rescue Plan Funds grants.
Any other questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Stitt?
Yes.
Mr. Edmund?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero-Namir?
Motion to approve action item H. Second.
Second.
Questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Guerrero-Namir?
Yes.
Mrs. Stitt?
Yes.
Mr. Edmund?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
A motion to approve action item I.
So move. Second.
Questions? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero-Namir?
Yes.
Mrs. Stitt?
Yes.
Mr. Edmund?
Yes. Motion to approve action item J, 1 through 8.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions? Comments? Roll call, please.
Mr. Edmund?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero-Namir?
Yes.
Mrs. Stitt?
Yes.
Any unfinished business? No. Any new business? Board reports? No. Do we have any announcements, Ms.? Same goes with any public comments. You get 3 minutes to talk on anything you want to talk about in addressing the board. 3 minutes. The ones that sign up, can you call their names, please?
Laura Nixon?
Hello, Board. Thank you for having me here tonight. I'd like to just take a second here to invite God into the room for a minute. I'm not a Bible-banging type person. I'm what you'd call a sinner. But I'm going to invite God in, okay? Because I think it's really important. It's the most important thing to me. And you know, all you got to be is just some kind of spiritual. You guys have a very big responsibility. You have, I don't know, tens of hundreds of thousands of, I'm going to call them kids, they're still kids, that you're responsible for, you know, and geez, you know, just with my own family, I know every day I'm weighing this and that, and I want to do the right things, and I don't, I don't want to add any problems. I want to make things easier and better for my kids and anybody I come into contact with, There's a lot of stuff going on, and things get real heated up in here. Now, the decisions that you guys are making, I'd say about maybe half of the parents are really pleased and half aren't. We love our kids very much, just as much as the other parents love their kids, and these decisions that you're making, the mask, the ability to breathe freely. Most of these kids aren't sick, and they're going through that every day. And pretty soon it's going to be shots and vaccines, And I really believe that parents, I believe with everything I have, parents should be the ones making these decisions, and the kids, we're talking about a lot of numbers I heard discussed tonight, and I realize that business is business, but, there's a lot to be said for old-fashioned ways, too, and keeping things simple. Really, your number one priority is the well-being of all these children that are under your watch. And at the end of the day, you answer to God, and I don't mean a punishing God. I mean, just directly, what you do affects everybody, We don't want anybody hurt here. We have discovered a lot of other information that seems to be being censored by the people who are even, they're not really, nobody's above anybody. We are all equal in God's eyes. And, but the people, the government and everything, they're censoring. Things from specialists, from doctors, from virologists. And I have a friend of mine, he went to school for about, 20 years he went to college. He's a sweetheart, but he doesn't have an ounce of common sense. And I know some people have both, and that's really a blessing. Because right now I think it's crucial, that we stand together and we got to look at these things. We know how the world works. Kids don't all know that yet. Money talks, money, who you know. Is that the time?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you for your comment.
God's the real authority.
Next, Ms. Rico.
Ms. Leanne Ryan.
Next. Next.
Mr. Jack Lombardi.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for allowing me to speak. God bless each and every one of you. Some of these could be rhetorical questions. We met before, so we'll get on with it. And I would like you to take them seriously, very seriously. Make notes, check my homework, okay? This is very important stuff here. I'm not an attorney, nor have I passed the bar. This should not be taken as legal advice or instruction. My statements come from information received from attorney Thomas DeVore to my best understanding is what I'm going to share with you. First, are you familiar with New York Times versus Sullivan, the comments made by Supreme Court Justice regarding our First Amendment and how it applies to elected officials of any office, including school board members and its officials? One thing. Are you familiar with HB 2789? Do you know what is in HB 2789? HB 2789, in short, takes local control from Illinois school boards, gives it to Springfield and Illinois State Board of Education. That's very important for you because it will take away your powers, and I don't think any of us believe that that's going to make things work very well for you to run these schools in these districts. There's a reason the hierarchy is in place, and it's for a good reason. Okay, so are you familiar if it got passed? It did not. It is actually sitting dead on the Illinois Senate floor, and hopefully concerned freedom-loving parents and call their local state senator and demand that they vote against it. Have you or any of you read the insurance policy for the Joliet School District specific to this school district, 204? Do you know what is in or not covered within the policy specific to COVID-19? And are you familiar with what, if any, remedy is available regarding COVID-19 in the case a child contracts COVID-19 while in school? That would be interesting to see the language of how they would determine where a child or a staff contracted COVID-19. Very interesting, because I know that's an argument that they're trying to throw at you. Has the school board engaged in correspondence with ISB regarding any understanding of HB 2789 and/or from what law or authority could ISB or Superintendent, I hope I don't say her name wrong, Ayala, be granted authority to decertify any Illinois school regarding mask mandate. Okay, from my understanding, there is no mechanism to pull the certification. And I guess we would all challenge you to look in the insurance to see how that's put together and how it would be proven that a child or a teacher or staff contracted COVID-19 while in any one of your schools in this district. That's all I have. Thank you. There will be FOIAs going out on this, so I hope you do take my homework serious. Thank you, everyone. God bless you.
Thank you for your comments. That's all?
Yes.
Thank you for your comments. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I would like to make my comment.
I so move.
Excuse me,
Second.
I would like to make my comment.
No question? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Stitt?
Yes.
Mr. Edmund?
Yes.
Mrs. Williams? Yes. Mrs. Burrow?
Have a good night.